Hello. On behalf of the Federal Railroad Administration, or FRA, an agency in the United States Department of Transportation, or USDOT, we welcome you to this public scoping presentation for the Western Rail Yard Infrastructure Project. FRA is the federal agency in charge of advancing the environmental review for this project, including preparing the Environmental Impact Statement, also called an EIS. During this presentation, you will learn about the project, also referred to as the proposed action, and the process that FRA will follow to analyze potential environmental impacts. Due to the ongoing coronavirus disease COVID-19 public health emergency, and consistent with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's guidance regarding limiting large events and mass gatherings, FRA is conducting virtual public scoping process for this project. This is why FRA has prepared this presentation and made it available on the project website for viewing at your convenience. FRA will be collecting your comments during the public scoping period, which runs from July 1st through July 31st, 2020. On behalf of FRA and the entire project team, we thank you for your interest in learning about this project and watching this scoping presentation. We welcome your comments and feedback. The National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA for short, is the law that requires federal agencies to undertake an environmental review process that takes a quote-unquote hard look at a project's or proposed action's potential impacts on the built and natural environment. This has to happen before a decision is made and construction begins. For this project, FRA will be leading the preparation of an environmental impact statement for the project in compliance with NEPA. In addition, FRA will follow the procedures of Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, which also applies to this project. Section 106 requires federal agencies to consider the effects of their projects on historic properties, including archaeological and cultural resources. As part of that process, Section 106 also requires that FRA seek comments about historic and archaeological issues of concern for the project from a variety of entities, including the New York State Historic Preservation Office, Native American tribes with an interest in the project area, and other organizations and individuals that have a specific interest in historic, archaeological, and cultural resources that could be affected by the project. Section 106 also includes opportunities for public review. So, during public scoping, FRA is also seeking comments about historic and archaeological issues of concern for the project. And if you have a particular interest in historic and archaeological resources, you can request to be involved in the Section 106 consultation for the project. During the EIS process, there will be opportunities for the public to provide comments and feedback. These opportunities for comment occur now, during scoping, and when the draft EIS has been published for public review. The project website will be available throughout the EIS process for you to read about the project and ask questions. The purpose of the scoping process is for FRA to ask for public input related to the project's purpose and need, alternatives to be examined in the EIS, resources to be examined in the EIS, how FRA proposes to analyze effects on the built and natural environment within the project's study area, and the public involvement and agency coordination process to be followed for the project's environmental review. FRA encourages you to submit scoping comments for the project. The options for submitting comments are all summarized at the end of this presentation and are also available for your reference on the project website. The public scoping period runs from July 1st, 2020 through July 31st, 2020, and scoping comments can be submitted anytime during that period, which will end on July 31st, 2020. The FRA will consider the comments received during the scoping period and will use them to inform the content of the EIS. Now we'd like to provide some background about the project site and planning processes that have been undertaken in the area over the past 35 years. The Western Rail Yard tracks and other facilities were specifically reconstructed by MTA in 1986 to accommodate support columns that would allow for future construction of private development over the yard. As shown on the map on the right, the Western Rail Yard site, outlined in yellow, is part of the larger Hudson Yards, outlined in blue. The area in and around the Western Rail Yard has been the subject of various planning, rezoning, and redevelopment efforts, covering more than 4 dozen blocks of Manhattan's far west side. In 2005, the Hudson Yards rezoning project instituted a major rezoning of the entire Hudson Yards area to accommodate a mix of uses and densities throughout the far west side, including over 38 million square feet of new development, the provision of new public open space, and an extension of the number 7 subway line, with a new number 7 subway station at 34th Street and 11th Avenue. In 2009, an EIS following the New York State and city processes was finished for the development proposed at the Western Rail Yard site, which included a platform and overbuild development. Based on that final EIS, zoning text and map amendments to the New York City zoning resolution were adopted by the City Council for the Western Rail Yard development. The platform and overbuild development are now considered to be built as of right, in accordance with the City Zoning Resolution's existing zoning controls for this site. This is a very important point to keep in mind in the context of the current NEPA project and its environmental review. In 2015, the new 34th Street Hudson Yards subway station opened, making development in this area more attractive, with access to the subway system. Most recently, the mixed-use development over the Eastern Rail Yard across the street from this site is getting close to being finished. The proposed action for this EIS has two main purposes. The first is to cover and protect the active Long Island Railroad tracks and support facilities in the Western Rail Yard to house critical life safety and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing support services for the yard, including new lighting, sprinklers, and an extensive platform ventilation system, and provide additional new capacity for real estate development. As mentioned before, when Hudson Yards was redeveloped in 1986, the Long Island Railroad, referred to as the LIRR, tracks and other facilities were specifically laid out to accommodate support columns that would be required for future development to be constructed at this site. The second is to preserve a right-of-way through the Western Rail Yard to support the future construction of a Trans-Hudson passenger rail crossing into New York Penn Station. The Western Rail Yard lies below street level on a site that is open to the sky and is intensively used every day by LIRR for the storage, interior cleaning, and maintenance of their commuter rail cars, as well as for other LIRR services and functions. As a result, no development above the rail yard can occur. The platform is needed to cover and protect the active railroad tracks and LIRR support facilities in the Western Rail Yard, and modernize state-of-the-art life safety systems for the entire Western Rail Yard, and to provide additional new capacity for real estate development above the active rail yard that would generate revenue for the MTA and its subsidiary agencies. MTA has long sought to maximize the revenue generation potential of its real estate assets. Currently, there is no capacity for development over the Western Rail Yard without construction of the platform. The tunnel encasement is needed to preserve right-of-way through the Western Rail Yard to allow the future construction of new rail infrastructure, which would support passenger rail service in and out of New York Penn Station. If this right-of-way is not preserved now, before private development occurs on the site, it will not be possible to construct this rail connection to Penn Station in the future. New rail infrastructure is part of the effort to maintain a functional, resilient, and improved Trans-Hudson passenger rail crossing into New York Penn Station, and maintain existing Amtrak Intercity and New Jersey Transit commuter rail service on the Northeast Corridor, as well as to support future increases in the capacity of the regional rail system that may be pursued. Consistent with the stated project purpose and need of the Western Rail Yard infrastructure project that were just outlined in the two previous slides, the four principal objectives of the project relate to: Number 1, maintain safe, continuous, and uninterrupted LIRR operations, construct critical life safety and ventilation systems, and modernize operational facilities within Western Rail Yard. Number 2, preserving opportunities to enable future growth of passenger rail service, and to maintain a functional, resilient, and improved Trans-Hudson passenger rail crossing into New York Penn Station. Number 3, supporting the ability to meet the revenue generation goals of the MTA, the owner of the Western Rail Yard. The platform is essential to enabling the previously approved, privately funded overbuild development to occur on the site. The sale of these development rights provides revenue to the MTA. And number 4, providing the support for the economic, social, and recreational life of the Hudson Yards area and the city. The following slides provide more description of the project elements, including their locations of these elements, and some details related to their design. As we have been explaining, the proposed project has two main elements: a 9.8-acre structural steel and concrete platform that would be built over the MTA LIRR Western Rail Yard, and a tunnel encasement built of reinforced concrete below a southeastern solid ground portion of the Western Rail Yard site, running diagonally from the northern edge of 30th Street to the western edge of 11th Avenue, where it would connect to an existing concrete encasement that has been built under 11th Avenue and which runs eastward under the Eastern Rail Yard to the western edge of 10th Avenue. The image on this slide shows the location of the proposed platform in context with the location of the proposed tunnel encasement, shown in red, and the surrounding neighborhood. Also of note on the aerial is the recently constructed concrete encasement to the east of the project site, shown in orange, as well as the existing Highline Park, shown in green on the figure for context, which wraps around the project site. In addition to covering and protecting the LIRR's Western Rail Yard commuter rail car storage, maintenance, and support services and functions, the platform would house critical life safety and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing support services for the yard, including new lighting, sprinklers, and an extensive platform ventilation system. Once complete, the entire yard would contain comprehensive state-of-the-art life safety systems, securing this critical infrastructure and protecting both the workers and the railroad equipment in the yard. The tunnel encasement would be between 50 and 65 feet wide, and between 27 and 38 feet high beneath the Western Rail Yard site, and would attach to a previously constructed encasement under the Eastern Rail Yard. Together, these tunnel encasements would preserve approximately 1,400 feet of railroad right-of-way. No permanent operational components like tracks, lighting, ventilation, or electrical systems would be constructed in the tunnel encasement as part of the project. Here is a brief overview of the main steps that occur during an EIS process, along with the dates FRA is expecting these steps to occur for this EIS. A few of these steps have already happened or are occurring right now, and include: Number 1, the Notice of Intent was published in the Federal Register on June 15, 2020. Number 2, the scoping period will go from July 1st to July 31st, 2020. Number 3, a draft EIS will be prepared and is expected to be available for public review in the spring 2021. Number 4, the final EIS and Record of Decision are expected to be finished in fall 2021. All of these steps are explained in more detail in the scoping document that is posted on this project website for your review. The EIS will evaluate impacts on the built environment, such as land use, parks, visual resources, historic and archaeological resources, and noise and vibration. It will also consider effects on transportation systems, including not only rail service, but also impacts to vehicular and pedestrian traffic. The EIS will include analyses of a full range of environmental issues, each with a defined study area, and will consider the potential impacts of the project both during construction and after construction is complete, as well as any foreseeable indirect and cumulative effects. As mentioned earlier, the analysis of how the project may affect historic and archaeological resources will be coordinated with the concurrent Section 106 review for the project. The EIS will also include a Section 4F evaluation, as required under the Department of Transportation Act of 1966. The evaluation examines potential impacts to Section 4F resources, such as parklands, historic structures, sites, or archaeological resources, and protected wildlife areas, from the construction and/or operation of a U.S. DOT project or action, and looks at measures that can be taken to avoid, minimize, or mitigate any identified impacts. The elements of the EIS and analyses to be undertaken are all discussed in more detail in the scoping document, which is available on the website for your review and comment. Shown here is a timeline showing the key milestones in the project's development and EIS process. Considerable time and thought have been spent by the project sponsors to plan for the project and to consider and refine the feasible and constructible design for the project. This process involved coordination between project designers and engineers and intensive review by the MTA and Amtrak over the last several years. As you can see on the slide, There are two main times during the EIS process that FRA will actively ask for public input: during scoping and when the draft EIS has been published for public review. We are now in public scoping, and FRA is asking for your thoughts and feedback. After scoping, we anticipate preparing a draft EIS by next spring, with public review in the spring of 2021, where again FRA will ask for your feedback and comments. FRA expects the last step in this process to be a combined final EIS and record of decision, which would be published by the FRA in the fall of 2021. You may submit comments during the scoping period in a number of different ways. All online comments will be collected at regulations.gov. The docket number for this project is FRA-2020-0039. A link to the docket is found on the project's website, www.westernrailyardinfrastructure.com. By U.S. mail to the address on your screen, which is also found on the project website. The FRA will give equal consideration to all written and online and mailed comments. As a reminder, please submit any comments or requests to become a Section 106 consulting party by July 31st, 2020. Thank you for your interest in the Western Rail Yard Infrastructure Project, for participating in the public scoping process, and for your time watching this presentation. The project website, www.westernrailyardinfrastructure.com, will be a resource for project updates throughout the EIS process. Thank you again for your interest in this project. We hope to hear from you.